Welcome everyone to the Monday Night Live Q&A. Erin Snow, our clinical director for the Seeking Integrity Residential Treatment Program and overseeing all of the programming at Seeking Integrity, is joining tonight here to answer questions. So, Erin, we have a question already, and I know we always run out of time. Oh, this says, "Hi, Dr. Rob." So this is not Dr. Rob. This is Erin.
But I
My
appreciate it because I think what takes some time in the beginning is like typing the question out, and that's why they all roll in. But this person came prepared.
I love it. Yes. My SA ex-husband, my SA ex-husband has been keeping in touch with mutual friends, and when asked what happened to our marriage, he explains his chronic infidelity. One of the issues that has me most concerned is his admitted fixation with younger women, perhaps fairly legal. He has weekly sessions with his CSAT, but does not attend any 12-step or other group work where I feel he could be working on being a safer individual. It makes me uncomfortable when I'm speaking to the same mutual friends because they don't understand the depth of his issues. And I believe that some of these couples with younger daughters aren't as safe. What's my responsibility to these families? This is a great question. Thanks for asking. And it's so complicated. Erin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is a great question and unfortunate and difficult. Um, so this is challenging because it's your ex-husband, right? So there's not a whole lot of influence you have directly on him, to my understanding, if the relationship is over. And it is uncomfortable too to have a bunch of mutual friends and he's kind of sharing openly about things that really is a story that was yours together, and you may not want everyone to know this. And some people would be, hey, I'm glad he's being honest. I mean, so it depends. The second issue, this is a hairier question. Um, I don't know what his acting out was. I mean, sounds like chronic infidelity. But the other piece, you don't have concrete knowledge, right? That he is a pedophile or hebephile or offending against children. And some men whose fantasies are in that barely legal category will never be somebody that actually offends against a person in real life. And then there are those that do. So I understand and I feel your concern. However, going to those families and saying, hey, I just want you to know, like, your daughter's not safe around, my ex-husband, is a really bold claim. Now, if you and could very much mess his reputation up for life. Let's say that this just is a fantasy thing or maybe even porn. Um, so I don't know in terms of your responsibility, unless you truly believe, like, hey, I was married to him for a long time. There are signs. I've seen him in real life, put eyes on a 12-year-old in an uncomfortable way. I've seen him make passes at young women. I'm not sure I would go telling other families to protect their kids from him. And that's just, yeah, I don't know the whole story. That's just at first glance, that's where I kind of go, is that could be a really damaging claim, because really and truly, pedophiles in our society, and even not people who have their full arousal template as minors, um, are pariahs. Like, then, and they harm people, and they have non-consenting victims, and they go out and they hurt people, and that is absolutely, yeah, unacceptable, dangerous, unsafe. But in this case, we don't necessarily know that that is who he is. He may have looked at something or have, had some fantasies in that area, but dismantling, some of his friend group, that could totally write him off for life. So I understand standing in that gap is really uncomfortable. I think you have to ask yourself a couple of important questions. One is, do I actually believe he would harm a minor? If you do, then yes, you have a responsibility to warn somebody that you care about. Um, if it's, I'm not sure, he's definitely, that's part of his arousal template and maybe in what he's watched online, um, then I would say hold off. You also can, I mean, even have the direct conversation with him at some point. I do have concerns. Do you have concerns? And I don't know what the line of communication is there. Um, so this one is challenging, definitely. And you're riding a line between doing nothing and potentially something happening, and now I feel really terrible about it. Or on the other side of that line is I could potentially be blowing up his, connections and friend groups and trust with people over something that would never happen. And so again, I would need more details. Like if I was assessing somebody, I would want to know a lot more about actual behaviors that I've seen with them in real life. But really
And
still
I
a
had
very
one more,
hard
yeah, I had one more
situation.
thought about this too, is he looks like he's showing up and being transparent, and you could be the bitter ex-wife. I've seen it where it's been like turned on somebody who's trying to do,
Right.
share information. So I love what Erin is talking about, like really think through all aspects of it. If a minor is in real danger, that absolutely, then, I'm going to go to the mat. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. I don't care what my reputation is, whatever. But, I would think through with your friend's situation. I also hope, I mean, I appreciate that, but he's being transparent, but he's also sharing intimate aspects of your relationship with your friends. And I hope he had the conversation with you about, here's what I'm going to do, so it isn't, him telling your side of the aspect too. So it's a very complicated question, and I'm really glad you brought it here. And hopefully you've got some paths forward to at least explore, what could be right, for you. So,
Mhm.
okay, Erin, the next question is, my SAPA husband has been in occasional therapy with a CSAT for just over a year and attended your Sex Addiction 101 course. He attends an SAA Zoom meeting once a week and has a sponsor, and he's working on the 12 steps, but doesn't really seem to be working too hard on it. He's been on step 4 for about 5 months now and only talks to a sponsor every 2 to 3 weeks. My gut says he's just checking off boxes and not in real recovery, so I won't leave him. In addition, he's 76 and has he's 76 and has Parkinson's. So skip down a couple. Last week, he told me that he read an article that says that masturbation is healthy for people with Parkinson's. Turned out it wasn't an article, but YouTube videos that he's also been watching videos about penis size, women's organs, and ED due to prostate problems. We haven't had a sex life for 11 years. He always told me before D-Day a year ago that his ED was due to his health issues and medications, but now I know it was porn-induced ED during our 49 years together. I don't, so I guess I don't know. I guess the question is, she's wondering if he's just checking off boxes. And clearly he's watching videos of
He's
content that
dabbling.
would not be ideal for someone actually really trying to get help. So thoughts?
Yeah. So it's interesting because what comes to mind for me is like lukewarm, right? So he's doing all the right things, right? The components are all there, but words like occasional, right? It shouldn't be occasional, at least for that first year. And also, it's like 5 months on step 4. You could be done with all 12 in that time frame. I mean, it depends on your sponsor and the pace and the way they do it, but that's a long time. Talk to your sponsor every 2 to 3 weeks. So I appreciate the effort he's putting out, but it does have this kind of like lukewarm feeling to it, which is like, I'm checking the boxes, but I'm not all in. And that's probably where some of your concern is coming in, is like, okay, mix that with some of these more concerning dabbling over here, playing with fire. It doesn't feel like, um, he yet is taking the accountability. I call it the external locus of control would be, he's doing this to make you happy, right? And doing this to keep her off my back, stay married. She's not going to leave. And I'm in this place where look at me, I'm doing the things. Internal locus of control would be that I am my own accountability partner, that like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to be beholden to these things anymore. I don't want to fight myself anymore. I'm sick of myself. And therefore, I'm going to do everything necessary. I'm going to take all the life wraps. I'm going to take all the ropes. I'm going to do everything that I can so that I'm not in this position. And as a result, that actually then bleeds over into the relationship, because it's like, whoa, I'm not having to play mommy over here. That's like are you doing your work? Are you not? And we see this a lot, obviously, not just the underlying intimacy disorder and a lot of the kind of attachment things that play into these relationships where compulsive behavior in the sexual arena is present, but it takes time. And sometimes it never comes, right? But it's that internal locus of control that we're looking for. We're looking for, I got to do this work for me, whether or not this marriage makes it. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be held prisoner to a behavior that I don't even want in my life anymore. Not just because I got caught, but because I don't know who my authentic self is. I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to be connected to people. So it feels like he is in that boat potentially. And again, we don't always know the full story and we get one side or the other, but based on what I'm reading, yeah, some lukewarm temperature to what's going on, because it seems to be just spread out time frames, right? Like occasional this, every 4 to 5 months, every 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of our guys that are, in alumni that are really killing the game at recovery are talking to their sponsors sometimes every day, twice a day, when they're in those struggle phases. So every 2 to 3 weeks, especially when you're actively working the steps, seems pretty spread out to me.
Well, and he's 76 years old. I mean, like this stuff, if we go with, the reasons for it, the underlying issues started before age 10, he's had over 60 years of these patterns. And so pretending like, well, just going to one S meeting a week and talking to my sponsor every few weeks and, just seeing my CSAT, I don't care if it was the best CSAT on the planet. I always, this is not enough, so, like Erin was talking about, if he isn't willing to do the work, to make things change, and it feels like, especially when you're talking about, he's, in and out of YouTube, checking out videos, for women's organs. I mean, give me a break. So, yeah, to me, I put a link in the chat for our work groups, and this is for you because he's dabbling in lukewarm, and I think she's giving him like 10 degrees warmer than I would, it's like tepid at best, but here's the deal. What are you doing to take care of you? Like you're hanging in there waiting, like what are you doing to say, I'm taking care of me regardless of what you do? We've got 3 groups for you. One is March 4th, the betrayed partner work group starts. That is basic information, solid course. Angela Spearman's been teaching it for years. She does a great job, and it's lots of topics. Separately, we've got 2 different groups on boundaries, internal boundaries, external boundaries. Debbie McCray does a fantastic job. She's the queen of boundaries. You've seen her on webinars with us, great stuff. And there's 2 different courses, and this is different than some of them. You don't have to take them in order. I would, just because one starts in April, one starts in May. You can't get enough help with that. But this would be to help identify, what do I need to do to take care of me regardless of what he's doing? That's all this, you got no control over him, and he's going to be, lukewarm. He's going to, as no addict changes until the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. He's dabbling a bit in this, but he's really not on the recovery side. He's still, he's still, looking at YouTube videos of women's organs and ED stuff and all of that kind of stuff, rather than going, wow, my behaviors have really caused a problem. I don't, like Erin said, I don't want to continue to act this way. I don't want to continue to be this person. I want to get help. And I believe that there is somehow, and grabbing all the lifelines, so you grab the lifelines for you, betrayed partner, and get the help and support that you need and deserve, in this, after 49 years, goodness, you need lots of support. So, okay, my husband is a PA, married for 31 years. Before marrying, I told him I couldn't be with a man who uses porn. Instead of respecting my values, he decided to use porn. He decided to be using porn in it secretly. He was excellent at deceiving and compartmentalizing, but his demeanor grew ever more confusing and hurtful, such as silent treatment, dismissive, objective, etc. After each D-Day, he apologized profusely and promised to stop and seek help, but nothing stuck. The latest D-Day was just over a year ago, and I immediately initiated an in-house separation. 6 months ago, he finally sought non-addiction based therapy, focusing on internal family systems. He's also pursuing ADHD diagnosis due to what he feels is this overall problem in compulsive seeking, e.g., painstakingly searching for the perfect bike part, of which he says porn has just a part. He claims he's been porn-free since we separated and has no interest in seeing a CSEC or attending 12-step or men's support group. He talks only to his therapist because he has no uh, no close friends whom he can seek advice. I doubt this course of action is enough to heal his addiction, and I'm not holding out hope, but I'm not an expert. So my question is it possible for him to heal from a lifelong addiction and problematic thinking like this with only non-addiction therapy and possibly ADHD meds? Thanks.
Okay, so a couple things on this. First thing that just pops out at me is be real careful with an ADHD diagnosis and ADHD meds. It's one thing that we have seen consistently because the gold standard for for treating ADHD is stimulants. Stimulants can take a bad porn addiction and make it far worse, right? Because those medications actually can create hyperarousal and states of fixation on the porn, whereas they're watching 2 hours a day, now they're watching 6 hours a day, not sleeping, whatever it is. So that's just something to be aware of, that there are non-stimulant options available for ADHD. And it's just something that when you're dealing with compulsive behavior around porn, these two things don't go well together. So just throwing that out there. And no, look, you can see a regular therapist. They may not even ever assess for this. Like I said, I went to 4 years of undergrad, 3 years of graduate school, an additional 2 to 3 years of 3,000 hours. Not once in all of that time did sex or porn addiction or compulsive sexual behavior ever once come up. And then I worked, for 10 years in substance use treatment. Never once did I know or understand until I was in this arena. And looking back, I'm like, oh my God, this was all over the place, but I was never trained. And so you could go to a regular therapist. It's highly unlikely, that they're even going to assess that there's a porn addiction issue, especially if he's not bringing it forth. And if he is bringing it forth, they may not know what the heck to do with it, right? They can deal with it maybe like other addictions are. They may have to do some of their own research to figure that out. But it's interesting to me that, he apologizes, he swears it off. Clearly, he goes back every single time. And you did tell him, 30 years ago before you got married, this is not okay with me. And it's interesting to me that he's willing to see a therapist, but not a CSAT. I think there's some very direct purpose in that, right? A CSAT's going to hold you accountable. They're going to say, this is what getting into recovery from porn addiction looks like. This is the steps that you need to take. They're going to have greater accountability around what those steps look like and actually saying, hey, you're either making progress or you're not making progress. So I think that in itself, not willing to go to 12-step, not willing to go to men's support groups. So I can just tell you that you're signing up for another D-Day or several more D-Days. And I'm glad that you did an in-home separation. I definitely think that that's a step to say, look, I'm not going to continue doing this. I'm not going to pretend that everything's okay after you apologize and, give you the benefit of the doubt that it's not going to happen again. When quite frankly, history tells me it is going. And if nothing changes, nothing changes. It just doesn't. So I think that at this point, I would be for you. What would make me feel safe engaging in any type of relationship with him, even if that's in-home separation, versus out of home separation? And I would just write those things down. You can have the conversation, but he's defensive. And I would just literally say, these are the things that I need to feel safe moving towards you versus moving away from you. I'm going to lay that here on the desk. I'm not going to bring it up again. I'll check back in 30 days. 30 days go by. Well, why? Well, can I come back into the bedroom? I promise I haven't used any porn. And you just say, I made it really clear. These were the things that I needed to feel safe to move closer to you versus further away from you. 30 days have gone by. You haven't done any of these things. So I'm continuing with in-home separation, or I'm now looking at moving further away from you. And it makes it really simple. It's not the nagging, asking, questioning all day, every day, which some of us betrayed partners can get into that cycle because it's fear-based, right? And we just are like, God, I want to shake you. But the science of motivation is that does not work. It's leading by example. So getting your own support, right? Maybe you get your own CSAT. Maybe you start going to a support group. Maybe you're starting to like live your big, beautiful life in this quadrant of the house over here. And you've made it really clear. These are the things that I need to feel safe to move closer to you. I'll check back in 30 days and don't say another word. He's either going to take you seriously, right? And watch you do something different for yourself and watch you engage in moving further away from him. Or he's going to, it's all data. It shows you, right? Actions at this point is all that matters because he's done the promises. He's done the lying. He's done the deceit. He's done the compartmentalizing. I mean, addiction is compartmentalization, right? And I'm sure in one compartment, he does love you and he doesn't want to lose you. And every time he gets caught, that compartment comes slamming to this forefront. But that other compartment hasn't gone away. It's just dormant, right? I got caught. I'm in trouble. I'm going to just push that down, but it doesn't make it disappear. This is a powerful addiction. Yes, it's a process addiction. Yes, it's a behavioral addiction, but it can be a chokehold without the right help. So that's my advice. It's just being really clear. And then your own internal boundaries are like, I am going to emotionally and physically and spiritually move towards support in a different direction. That he's, he can't be the safe person for me. And I'm not going to pretend that this is, moving in any specific direction if he's not willing to do anything.
And I agree with everything Erin said, and the denial, lying to ourselves is where it all starts. I mean, that is how addiction thrives. It has to. But a year of in-house separation, what is the plan? Like, who are you guys working with from a professional standpoint? Clearly, he's not working with, a CSAT, but what is the plan? What are you looking for, to make it that one way or the other? I love what Erin said. Here's what I'm looking for, 30 days. I did share in the chat, there's a blog with 4 different webinars on should I stay or should I go? It's just good information. I think everybody should be, like writing, do I even like this person? Do I, what, all of those things. Kristen Snowden's webinar is the first one. And it was, 10 questions to ask, to just journal about and think about. But when somebody's in an in-house separation for a year, we've even had 3 years, it doesn't feel like there's any plan, and so it can be a really stuck place of like, this is like your roommates. And if it's good for you, fantastic, no judgment, but you're here writing this, so there's concern. And so how do you make yourself safe, even if you choose to stay in the house and be roommates? How do you make sure you're taking care of you? So I go back to the things I recommended earlier, the healthy boundaries. Work groups are coming up, so that you can help identify what you need. We have drop-in groups, multiple every week, a CSAT or at least a betrayal trauma specialist for you, could be really helpful to help you navigate that too. So lots of resources for you. You have no control over him, but you can sure lean into resources and help for you. Okay, next one. I am a partner. We are 6 months out from D-Day. My husband has been in recovery for 3 months. We are trying to figure out how to have healthy sexual intimacy and are having a hard time finding books or guidance on this topic. Any suggestions?
Well, I think this is early, right? 3 months of recovery. And I want to know, basically, I would be interested in asking if you have disclosure first, right? I always say that you kind of don't even have consent around your physical body until you really know. And maybe they're a porn addict versus having sex outside of marriage, but sometimes you don't know. But full therapeutic disclosure is a process that is typically embarked upon with a CSAT that supports either one of you. And then you get, they prepare this is the full record of truth. And not all partners want this, and that's okay. This is about whether you want it or not. But I do find sometimes that when sexual intimacy comes on the scene before emotional trust is formed, it causes more problems than it does connection. And so that's my first level of advice would be, are you guys communicating, honest, open with one another? Are you feeling that there is trust being built through action, like watching him do something different? Because if that's all true, and you do feel safe, and you do feel, which would be tough at 3 months of sobriety, right? 6 months D-Day, but 3 months of him actually being in recovery. It would be tough. That being said, yeah, when you begin to embark on the journey of sexual intimacy, what I would say is that you're right. There's not a whole lot of books. There are some on like post infidelity and re-engaging in that area of your life. But I always think that one option that we like is Sense It Focus. And the reason why I think it's important is it's based in communication. It's based in intimacy. It's based in starting from literally lights on, clothes on, sitting up, right? This is a graded task assignment. So we're eventually getting to the act of intercourse, but we're not necessarily ever focused on like, this has to end in orgasm. It's just about pleasure, and it's about exploring what the other person likes, that you both like different things. And so you're starting again, lights on, clothes on. Maybe you're scratching each other's back. Maybe it's, holding hands on the couch. Maybe it's doing an activity you mutually enjoy. But the whole point is that you're communicating. And so you can look up Sense It Focus. I mean, it's definitely something you could set on your own. A lot of people will do it with a therapist that can help, like tell you when you're ready to graduate to that next step and really process it in an emotional way. But I do think the most important thing is you have to feel safe, right? That physical intimacy, I think sometimes couples run in a little bit soon because it's reassurance, right? So early on in betrayal trauma, some partners are like, well, if I'm not being sexual with them, then they're going to go out and get their sexual needs met elsewhere, which is not necessarily true, but it comes up as a fear. Or they may feel pressured, or it feels obligatory. And other times it's, I'm hurt and I want the person that I love. And it's kind of that ambivalent love of like, come here, go away. I want you. And then after the act or even during, I'm triggered and I'm like, get the hell away from me. How could you hurt me? So it can be a little bit messy in those early months. But doing something like Sense It Focus allows for you to wade into those waters slowly with trust, with communication, and with a focus that is more on enjoying each other's company than it is about just the act of sex itself. Yeah, that's where I would weigh in on that.
So, and I typed in a Masters and Johnson Sense It Focus Touch. So I want to back up because 3 months is really early. Just not acting out is merely abstinence. I say all the time, it's just we're not doing what we weren't supposed to be doing in the first place. So Erin talked about building trust. What is he doing to build trust? Is he, 3 months? Has he gone to 90, 12-step meetings in 90 days? Fantastic. How often is he seeing a CSAT? Is he doing our sex addiction 101, or porn addiction 101 online work group? Is he going to our drop-in groups? What is he doing to show you that he's working to change? Because otherwise it's just abstinence. It's not, changing. True recovery takes 2 to 5 years. So any of us learning to integrate different into our lives, we don't have the tools. We have to learn them, and we have to learn to practice using them, etc. So I don't, my concern is for you, partner, that you will think, oh, he's safe now and I can trust him. And, and then, things tend to try to go back to how they were before. Addict quits doing whatever they were doing to start being on a different path, and then it happens again. So being cautious. And I love the Sense It Focus Touch because it's, it's in degrees. It's not like we're jumping into bed and we're gonna have sex and we're gonna have orgasm, and then, it's all about, that slowing everything down. So lean into the betrayed partner things. I'll say it again. We've got, online work groups for you that will help you with communication. with Angela's group, they talk about, sex when, and, when to, start integrating that. Like and it's not a time, it's not like at 90 days. It's when do you feel safe? When do you see signs that things are really starting to shift? So the more work your addict partner is doing to change, the more you will start to feel like this is starting to feel like we're on a path towards, connection again. So, so I'm so glad you're here. Um, you're not alone. So lean into the resources we provide. Okay, my husband of 30 plus years lost his job 2 months ago as a result of PA that he kept secret from me for our entire marriage. This has sent us into a financial tailspin while we are trying to deal with all aspects of betrayal, trauma, and addiction. I'm trying not to let my panic and disappointment become resentment and anger. Any advice?
Yeah, it is hard. And to find out in this way is really challenging, because if he's, whether he was watching porn at work or on company devices, or, on the company Wi-Fi or whatever it is, this is not the way you want to find out about this. Because you're dealing with two crises at once. One is our marriage is in, betrayal, trauma, hell. And the other is Andy lost his job and financially we're struggling. And I didn't know, and how long has this been going on? And so I think that you're going to go through a period of stabilization. And in that period, just recognize you're in crisis and you need a lot of support and a lot of grace for yourself. The brain does really funky things in betrayal trauma. It follows PTSD in the brain. It looks the same and it can feel the same, meaning you can have flashbacks, you can have nightmares, you can re-experience the event over and over again. You can have your brain literally pull up images that were never even real, but the brain is trying to fill in the gaps, because the trauma is, my reality is not what I thought it was. I thought it was one thing, and it was like the rug just got flipped out from under me and my world is spinning. And so I think for you, finding ways that regulate you. I thought in the beginning, because my brain wanted to go to those safety seeking behaviors, which is like checking the phone, checking the email, drive by the place he says he was, watching the location, all of those things that my brain was like, if you don't know, you're not safe. But those things all actually made me feel less regulated. And I knew that if I was to show up in the relationship the way that I wanted to, that was in character with who I am, or as a mother or at my own job, that I had to find ways to regulate me, So obviously starting therapy was a big deal. I found a salt cave in my town that's like meditative music and it's Himalayan salt on the walls. I would walk. So if I had big feelings, I would walk them out, you know, I would put loud music on and I would go for a walk. So I did a lot of things that were like, how can I stay in character with who I want to be in this process? And also let those emotions and move through me, that, if I stuffed them down, like they almost inevitably turned into hyper focus on what he's doing. And then internally I felt rage. Like I just wanted to lose my mind. And so, give yourself grace. You're going to be angry and you're going to have resentment. You're 2 months into kind of a crisis falling apart here. But the more you can do to connect, hopefully with maybe other women that are going through this, joining some of our resources, seeing a therapist that can support you, and some of those healthy self-care things that maybe weren't a priority before suddenly become quite a priority when you're in the thick of it, right? Because you're just trying to hang on. You're just trying to hang on and get through days. So that's my best advice, is find the things that when you are completed with it, you feel a little bit more in your body and a little bit more regulated. That's how I prevented the panic and disappointment from going to resentment and anger, is I let those emotions come. I cried, I journaled, I did all the things, but I wanted them to move through, right? And I didn't approach conversations with my partner when I was in that super highly escalated state. I waited.
I'm glad you brought up journaling because I remember you saying that, and Debbie McCray has talked about that too,
Yeah.
journaling and just,
She
the brain dump of getting, yeah, there you go.
always with me. Rage
Yeah,
right.
but
I mean, you can
yes.
write all the anger you want. You can crush
Mhm.
those pages up. You can, but just sometimes giving voice, the kinetic, like, process of writing is helpful. It helps to move things through.
Here's the other thing she did, which I've shared with other people. She would do a cold plunge, which sounds awful to me because I don't like being cold, but I would do it if I was that dysregulated,
Yeah.
like that, because you've shared it just
Yeah.
shocks your system. And
When all else fails, when I'm like, nothing else is working, shock your central nervous system. Yep. And that could be holding ice. That could be getting a cold shower. Something to just reset your nervous system. And a cold plunge has a lot of health benefits. Personally, torture for me, but afterwards, I was like, I can breathe again. I'm like back in my body because you don't have a choice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and your story, is unique in one way and so similar to so many other people. They have discovery because the FBI is, breaking down the door. I mean, like there are very traumatic ways of finding out, about the betrayal. So, and I'm so sorry, on that level. But we have so many, free and low cost resources, for you each and both. And I hope he is taking this as motivation to get help regardless of what he does or doesn't do. We've got help and support for you. So,
Mhm.
okay. So the next question is it ever appropriate to have a conversation with your addict's potential acting out partners and women they did and might still lust after or intrigue in order to collect data about how far things went and if it's still going on? I'm curious about this because one of these people is my partner's ex-wife with whom he has children with, females he lived with 2 years ago. One was a barely legal teen, an ex who lived near while we weren't living together, whom he reached out to in months after they broke up, and while we are together, and coworkers. I'm the betrayed. We both have therapists for his sex and porn addiction and my betrayal trauma.
I mean, to each their own, right? I've seen this go a number of different ways. It is not something I personally would be doing. Um, it's that idea that what we just talked about, that like our brain, it's very natural for your brain to say, I absolutely need to know more. I need to know the details. I need to know how far it went. I need to know if there was emotions involved. I need to know. And the truth is, it does not help the process of moving forward. It can, further disrupt someone else's life. It can, you know, it can put things in your mind that you can never unhear and unsee, making it nearly impossible to heal the relationship that you two are trying to heal. So for me, it's a no. I wouldn't. Now, people choose to do that, and who am I to say that you can't? But I just don't think it has the outcomes that people are hoping for. And if nothing else, you find out things that you didn't want to know, or details that you were hoping, you know, I don't know. It is hard because you can't trust sometimes, a lot of the times. But the way to move through and past this is not to go back and interview ex wives and acting out partners. It will keep you stuck in the anger, the rage, which is dysregulating for you. It's not even about whether or not it's wrong or right. It makes you feel worse. And on a day where you already are struggling to survive and you're struggling to heal and you're struggling to get on the right path to healing, it drags you right back in to day one all over again. And yeah, so I personally it would not be a choice that I would be making. Yeah.
And I'm looking at this, I'm going like, I don't hear that you have any trust in him, that he's doing
Yeah.
anything to build trust with you. That's the problem. I mean, these other people, for whatever reason, and they may or may not tell you the truth, but wow, you spending a whole bunch of your time stealing your joy, running around to other people who may or may not tell you the truth. I'm going, this dude is not showing up and showing you that he's changing, that, you know, that to me is the massive question here is, what is he doing to show you that he's, changing? If he was working to rebuild the relationship, a formal therapeutic disclosure, he'd work with a qualified professional. He'd have the data and he'd be able to, help you in a regulated way, with the information. But, it isn't just telling you all the gory details, just like Erin was saying, it's not about finding out all these little things, and if you go running around to them and ask them all those questions, you know what, you'll go running around it because you'll think of another question, So at some point, it was bad. And either he's working to build a relationship with you with trust, or he's not. And to me, like, that's the question to ask yourself. I mentioned earlier, should I stay or should I go? And it isn't even about staying or go. I mean, but like, for you to write about those questions, I think it's just good information. I always say both partners write, and then you'll either go, wow, yes, I'm really committed to this relationship and I'm willing to do what it takes, or like, to use Erin's words, we're lukewarm, and like, it's a good gauge of things. How hard are you willing to fight for this? And it's going to take both of you fighting for it, not him, doing a half job.
Mhm.
Okay, the next question, and you know how I feel about this. Is it wise to require a porn addict to take a polygraph test every few months to prove he or she is telling the truth?
So seeking integrity stance on polygraphs is that they're trash. I mean, that's just this.
They are, yeah.
They're not admissible in court. We have seen so many cases. I mean, they're essentially anxiety meters, right? We've seen so many cases of guys coming into treatment where if they're cool, calm, and collected, or highly narcissistic or sociopathic, they fully admit that they lied and passed, no problem. Others coming into treatment are like, I was telling the truth. And, we go through weeks of treatment with them. We know they're telling the truth, and they failed because they were scared, And we've had others that come in and they literally took a polygraph 2 days apart, the exact same questions. Nothing happened in between. They passed one, they failed one. So they're not reliable is the best way to put it. Some people think that putting a polygraph at the end of a disclosure, like, puts the pressure on to really tell the truth. But I would just say, don't put all your eggs in that basket, and at least be well informed that it's not the barometer of trust. The barometer of trust is, what are they doing? How are they showing up? What's the action steps they're taking? Do they have porn filtering software on their devices? Are they copying too when they have a little white lie about, the restaurant they went to, because they told you they went to Salads and More and they actually went to Taco Bell, and they're like, you know what? I was ashamed that I went to Taco Bell and I wanted to tell the truth. Like, that's the barometer of trust. Are they treating me differently? Are they being transparent? Are they showing up to doing the things that they say that they're going to do? Because, you could do a polygraph every few months and their recovery is crap, and maybe they haven't watched porn, but is that enough for you? And then still at the back of your mind being like, well, did they just have a good day and they passed it because they were like, oh, I'm cool, calm, and collected about this? Or maybe it was just a little bit of non-porn, I mean, so I don't know. We as a company don't advocate for using polygraphs. There's plenty of people out there that do use them, and that's a personal choice. But I always say, at the very bare minimum, at least be well informed that, there's a reason they're not even admissible in court.
And I put the American Psychological Association, there's an article from them about that. I put that in, the truth about lie detectors, aka polygraph tests. But they do, this says to tell that they're telling the truth. They do not measure truth. Everybody thinks, oh, they're gonna tell the truth. No, they measure stress. That's it. And so you're not getting honesty. The other thing with all of these is there's no, in fact, the Polygraph Association has said that there are certain questions you can't ask, and still polygraphers will ask those questions. Like, the organization says these are unethical. Like, did you omit anything, or, is anything, like, any kind of global question are unethical questions, and people still ask those. There's no efficacy, there's no blah, blah, blah. So there's a whole bunch of reasons not to, and especially if you're basing the outcome of your relationship on faulty technology. I mean, that's a scary thing to me. Is like I'm gonna put all my trust in, should I move forward with this relationship or not, on something that is known to be faulty technology. So as
Yeah.
long as everybody's aware, you get to choose. So
Yeah. And I get it too. I
yeah.
get that feeling of, I remembered thinking, how did I not know? How did
Hmm.
I not know? I mean, well, people, I do
How
this
did
for a
you not know? I
living,
know.
for
Yeah,
God's sakes.
exactly.
How did I
Yeah.
not know?
Yeah.
But for me, that's again what our brain kind of plays the tricks on us, is like, I may never know. Okay. And quite frankly, trust is a choice for me. At that time, I was choosing to trust because this wasn't on my radar. I'm not going to spend my days tracking you down, right? I'm not going to live in that place because it steals my joy. I don't get to live a life when all I'm doing is focusing on you and and checking everything for, I'm not going to do that. That's just me. So I think with polygraphs, people often think, well, if I didn't know, then I need some way that I can know with certainty. And they think that this is a way of doing that, but it doesn't bring the result of, well, now I know with certainty, and God forbid they fail it and they're telling the truth and they're doing all the work and the actions are all there and the relationship's changing, but they failed it and all the eggs are in that basket and it sucks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a guy, he called and he was like, and I said he had an anxiety disorder. He like, yeah, and I could hear it in his voice. And I was like, I laid it all out. And he's like, well, my wife really wants me to do this. And he called back and he failed. And I was like, well, of course you did, like, and I was like, what's the plan? And it wasn't good. And I felt so bad for him because like I felt the sincerity, and I have a pretty good BS meter, and so it is what it is. Everybody gets to choose, we have lots of we have lots of experience, and we give, suggestions, offerings, resources, and everybody chooses their path. We always hope that it's the right one for them that will help them, but you get to choose. So, no judgment. Betrayed here. Since discovery and seeking therapeutic support, my partner identifies as a sex porn, rage, violence, intrigue, validation, and love addict, and a dry alcoholic. How is he ever going to be able to have a healthy interactions with women, even in simple day-to-day interactions, when simply a woman giving him attention could lead down a rabbit hole for him? He's in 12-step groups, has a CSAT, and started a 12-step work.
Well, that's quite a list. Um, I guess my first inkling is to go to safety, like safety for you, you know. But look, I've had I've had many of these clients, and recovery is possible for them. And yes, there are tools that we use, tools that we give, tools they learn in the rooms about how to deal with living in the world where you can't just live in a world where all of your triggers are removed, especially when sex is everywhere. It's on your billboards, it's driving down the street, it's everywhere. I was just looking for a freaking chair on Amazon, and it was like non-porn. It was like every other ad was like a half naked 15-year-old laying on a chair. And I'm like, what is this? It's everywhere. There's no way to remove all the triggers. It's about being prepared to live in a world that has triggers, right? It's about being prepared with tools, with and having a tool belt ready to go, and having people, right? It's about bringing that behavior into concrete structure and then having accountability with other people in recovery who you get to call, text, bookend troubling situations with, where you text them before you go, you text them after. Sure, there's going to be places that he may need to avoid because maybe the whole place is a trigger, right? But I would just say, he's in 12-step groups, has a CSAT, and is starting his step work. He's on the path. He's going to learn tools for how to live in the world when, hyper arousal is like always, hyper fixated on those triggers, teaching you how to bounce your eyes away from something, the 3-second rule, how to reach out for support when you're, entering into a situation that's challenging, because there are definitely things we can't avoid, but there are tools for how to manage and handle them.
Yeah, and I, I was thinking he qualifies for lots of 12-step groups, but I did put the link for our expert residential treatment, how to get the most help getting through and having a plan. We have an expert residential treatment program that would really give him a solid foundation. But that said, like 90 meetings in 90 days. I actually went to, multiple meetings, and some days I just needed more meetings. So,
Some
I would
days I
go to
sat in the chair all day.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I didn't, yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if I did that. There weren't that many meetings, but I did. I went to multiple meetings in a day and called my sponsor. Erin talked earlier about, call your sponsor twice a day. The more work he's doing, the 12 steps are the 12 steps on some level. Even AA Big Book talks about a lot about sex. So when people go, I've been sober from alcohol for, however long, but sex and porn addiction are rampant. I'm like, I think he skipped over a lot of the fourth and fifth step because, it talks a lot about that stuff. So if he dives into that, steps 4 through 9 are really the housekeeping steps and will help, but yeah, the more he leans into the recovery work, the more he will start to have tools to use because, life is life and it's messy and there's going to be things. So, but betrayed partner, please make sure you are taking care of you, that you've got healthy boundaries for you, that you've got safety, grounding, regulation, all of those things for you, so that you're not focused on, oh my gosh, she's going to be triggered with all of these things, and rage is never okay. So, if he's
silence.
raging at you, yeah, like making sure that you are stepping away from that situation so that you are safe, physically as well as emotionally. So, okay. So betrayed partner here, D-Day 1.5 years ago, disclosure 9 months ago. My gut tells me the disclosure wasn't truthful. Yesterday morning, I had a moment of clarity that I am afraid of him because I never thought that he could be who he ended up being, and that means he could become that again. Do you feel like this is a block that I need to work on overcoming, or is that a common trauma response that one in this position should consider a normal part of the process that may eventually pass? That's a great question. Thanks for asking that one.
Yeah. I do think that it is a part of the process, but also don't ignore your gut. And I always say that you don't have to have direct evidence of something to set a boundary. I think some people do go into the safety seeking, and because I have to have evidence, because if I don't confront him with the evidence, then that I can't tell him I caught him, and then he's not, he's never going to tell the truth. But I always say that if your gut's telling you something's not right, ask yourself, what about my gut is telling me something's not right? Is it his behavior? Is it the way he's treating me? Is it slacking off on certain things? Is it the way that he hides his phone, or spends too much time in the bathroom? Like, what is it? So get clear on that. And you can set a boundary just simply saying, I'm in a state right now where I'm grappling with my intuition. And I just need a little bit more space. I need more space to regulate, something's telling me that something's missing. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I need some time. So I always tell people, you don't have to have direct evidence of something. You could say your behavior is shady. You're missing meetings. You're not showing up when you say you're going to show up. You're working late all the time. Like, I don't feel safe with those behaviors. I don't have to have evidence that they've relapsed, right? To set a boundary or even internal boundary. And then the other thing is, yeah, there is definitely, it's a normal part of the process. Just like when you get in a car accident, for a period of time after that, like you got comfortable driving, right? You were like driving down the road, on the freeway, not afraid. You get into an accident and trauma is saying, oh no, now this is on my radar that this can happen, and this could happen to anyone. It could happen at any time. And so that is a normal part of the process to be, I was duped, it came out of left field. I wasn't expecting it. And bam, I was hit by the car. And now driving is scarier for me because I'm aware that this can happen again. So that definitely is a part of the healing process. I think that all betrayed partners absolutely go through. I do think with consistent action and consistent time that those walls become to come down and the brain begins to kind of reorient to the new reality and it's not so present. So I would say that yes, it would eventually pass, but you also have to be in, the environment where those changes are happening and you feel safe in those changes and you're allowing yourself to kind of like slowly trust in metered ways as action is being displayed for you. Yeah.
And I was thinking, it was a year and a half ago. So whatever you thought your reality was for however long, and then all of a sudden a year and a half ago, everything got, you had the car accident. So it does take time. It sounds like you're making progress with things, and I wouldn't be surprised if those things pop up. I did put there's an empowered women's retreat coming up again in April. I hope you will consider that. It's about healing for the women. It's not about what the addict's doing or not doing. It really is about healing for the women. So, please consider that for yourself. I think it's really important for women who are willing to choose, that I'm not going to get stuck in this. I want to heal, that they get that kind of support.
Mm-hmm.
What qualities, characteristics do you see in the addicts that end up being successful managing their addiction long-term versus the ones that don't? I love that question.
Great question. Well, I think that someone that is surrendering to the process, so saying, step one stuff, right? Like this is unmanageable. I can't handle this on my own. I need help and I'm just going to surrender to the suggestions of the people around me. Great green flag, right? Another one would be that they're willing to get open and honest pretty quickly. And yeah, a lot of our clients have been compulsive liars their whole life. It started in childhood and like some of that takes time because they literally, it's an autonomic response almost. But being open and honest, especially like in the recovery setting with their therapist, I'm dropping the skeletons out of the closet, I think willingness, not that I'm going to do the bare minimum to check the boxes, but I'm going to do everything to get a solid foundation under me, like right away, because I don't want to live like this anymore, and it's not just a bunch of empty promises and words. It's like, it's actions. Right. And I also think, there's all kinds of layers to the clients that we treat. Mental health, right? So if they have a comorbid or co-occurring mental health condition, that that they are getting help for that as well, whether that's medication, whether that's coping skills for certain, trends that we see, that's going to give them a better chance at actually, reaching recovery. Willingness that if substances are potentially, a comorbid situation, that even if they say, oh, I'm not an alcoholic, I don't drink alcoholically, but it seems that every time I do drink, I end up watching porn, I ended up calling this person, I ended up doing that they're willing to just take the whole line out of the compulsive stuff, like just get rid of it. So I think honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, and surrender are, if I'm seeing that in the first week or so, 2 weeks, that's good. And their ability, I think, to lean on support and connect to other people is huge.
So as someone in long-term recovery, I've had the opportunity to see lots of people who've been also in long-term recovery and lots of people who didn't, And so all of the things that Erin said, I also wrote this down because Scott and I do a webinar every month and we alternate months. And I'm going like, I'm doing this as a topic because I love this question. And, we did one on what 12 steps is. I think those very basic, components. But yeah, it's the willingness to do it, not hiding behind things, not hanging on to things, so it's doing a searching and fearless moral inventory. I say all the time, that it's doing the steps. It's not just, warming a seat. The people that do steps 4 through 9 and continue and don't go, oh yeah, got that, You know, we talk about that with clients leaving treatment too. It's like, oh, fluke, got it. You know, massive red flag. So those of us who take, I mean, I don't take my addiction for granted, you know, for a moment. I know it's there, you know, and I have too much good stuff. And I think it's also for those of us who get to that point where we go, gosh, this is so much better than the way I used to live. You know, we want to hang on to that, for dear life. So that's the shift. But you know, like we were answering that question earlier with the person that goes, I'm not going to go to a CSAT therapist. I'm only going to do these things and all that. I mean, the prognosis is not good for someone, you know, who's not willing to even identify what the issues are, you know, and kind of wants to go, well, I have cancer, but I'm going to go get treated, for a toothache. You know, I mean, it's like you get the help that you need so that, you know, get the support. This is a good way to live if you choose it. So, but yeah, thanks for asking that question. You know, it comes down to willingness and continuing the journey. You know, it's not, one and done. So, but
Mhm.
anyway, so keep coming back. Lots of things. Maddie Corman is going to be, we have a special edition, special time next week, Wednesday. She's going to, from Accidentally Brave, watch the HBO special, listen to the audiobook,
Amazing.
whatever you need to do. But she's going to be on answering questions. That is open. It is not just for betrayed partners. So please, join it. It's a webinar format, so you will not be seen or heard, but she'll be here to answer your questions. So I invite you to join that. We also have other special edition webinars. So keep staying tuned because we're coming up with some great topics and special guests. So keep joining us. Thanks, Erin. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Have a good
Bye.
night.